Welcome to another program in our series, Freethinking Forum. And I think we do need to do a lot of thinking outside the box, outside the beehive. And with my distinguished guest here, Jenny Warner. Thank you, Jenny.
Thanks for having me.
You're a team leader for the Bee Squad.
Yes.
Now we usually invite the A Squad, but you're the B Squad.
Exactly. There is no A Squad at
Oh.
the Bee Lab, just the B Squad.
So, what are bees?
Well, bees are different than wasps, and
The wasps bite more.
well, some wasps can be more aggressive. In general, wasps can sting more than once, so they tend to be more defensive than most bees in general. But a lot of times people think that something out in the environment is a bee, and so bees get blamed for things sometimes, like yellow jackets or wasps
Yeah.
are often called bees, but they are technically wasps. All necessary parts of our beautiful interconnected web of life.
Yes.
But I work primarily with honeybees.
And why? Why should we care about bees?
Well, as you know, they are all part of the world. We need all of them. They're part of the food chain and the ecosystem. But honeybees specifically play a big role in our food system.
What's that?
Well, about almost up to 40% of what we eat is dependent on bees for pollination.
You mean we'd have to eat 40% less if we didn't have bees out
Maybe
there?
not 40% less, but we'd have a lot less variety. So
Oh.
if you went into the grocery store, you might have a hard time finding fruits and vegetables.
Ooh.
Even if you like cheese or meat, our alfalfa is pollinated. The seed is dependent on pollination by insects, primarily honeybees. So even if you don't really like fruits and vegetables, the milk you put in your cereal is bees are playing an integral part in that.
Yeah.
So they
And
really are the workhorse of our agricultural system.
I was struck by the figure 80% of flowering plants depend on animal pollination.
Yeah, they do.
And so if we didn't have bees and
Yeah, if we don't have bees, you might get some apples, but they'd be shrunken, they wouldn't be as tasty, they'd be mealy, they'd be lopsided.
I don't want that.
Right, so if those flowers don't get pollinated, they don't have a fruit set.
What should we know about the division of labor within the hive?
In the hive, well,
I've heard
that's
there's
what's,
a queen.
there is a queen.
And where's the king?
There's no king,
Oh,
only a queen. And honeybees are fascinating, endlessly fascinating as a social insect. Just from a biological standpoint, they are endlessly fascinating. And they work as a superorganism. So if you have a hive of bees, all the bees together comprise a superorganism. They're dependent on each other for life. So you have your individual bee, but she's dependent on her sisters and the rest of the hive. So you have the queen, and she's the only one who lays eggs. And then you have the workers, and those are all female, and they do all the jobs in the hive and outside of the hive as far as gathering nectar and pollen. And then you have drones, which are the male bees. So
and they don't do anything?
they don't do any in-hive work at all. And they, in their lifetime, what they will do is they'll go on mating flights. So they'll go to a drone congregation area, and they will wait for a virgin queen, which in all likelihood doesn't happen in that drone's lifetime. It may or may not happen, depending on where that drone is and whether the beekeepers in the area are letting their queens mate freely or whether they're introducing queens they've purchased. But in the natural world, that's what a drone would do.
There are people who create hives.
Yep, there are people, queen breeders and people that raise bees and create packages for other beekeepers to use.
Now, I see there's a big decline in the U.S. honeybee colonies.
There is, since...
What was it, 6 million?
Yeah, there used to be about 6 million
Colonies.
hives in this country.
But
Then,
Down below 3.
right
in
now we're about 2.1 million hives.
Wow.
So we have about a third of the colonies that we had before World War II.
What should we do about it?
There's a lot of things that individuals can do as far as the choices you make in your own yard, in your own life, and your own food choices.
I've heard that one thing is to eliminate some kind of
Neonicotinoids. Yeah, it's a family of pesticides that is detrimental to bees, honeybees, and other bees. But it is really a complex web of what's making bees decline.
So it's not only insecticides and herbicides and fungicides, but landscape without flowers.
Right. There's not nutrition for bees. And if bees don't have good nutrition, they just they can't thrive in any capacity. They can't withstand being exposed to even a small amount of pesticides or a virus or
Or
other things. Yeah. So, you know, if you have a child who has poor nutrition and you know, some health effects, and then he's exposed to some chemicals, his body's not going to be able to tolerate that. It's the same with a bee. So it's all very interconnected. If a bee has good nutrition and a healthy colony can actually withstand some exposure to chemicals in the environment.
But I hear there's also a parasite.
Right.
Varroa?
The varroa mite. Mm-hmm. And that is a parasitic mite. On a bee, it's about the size of, you know, on us, it would be about the size of a rabbit or something. So it's actually, you can see it on a honeybee with your naked eye. And the varroa mite has been a problem that's been getting worse and worse over the last 20 years. And it is our main problem as far as the decline in the colonies that we see through the university and through any commercial beekeeper. I think will tell you that is their main problem. Some people have problems being exposed to pesticides if they're in a agricultural setting and there's sometimes drift or misapplications. But anybody who's keeping bees in this day and age is dealing with the varroa mite, and it's a big problem.
Now I understand your organization, what is it, that takes care of beehives for companies and other people?
Yeah, so the part of the bee lab that I work for, Bee Squad, has a program called Hive to Bottle. And
Hive to
Bottle.
Of honey.
Like a bottle of honey.
Oh.
So basically, it can be a business or a private person can hire us to manage their colonies.
Well,
and
I hear that some of the biggest corporate headquarters have.
Yeah, that's right. So we've got them at Target, we've got them at 3M, we've got them at Boston Scientific and at Aveda.
Well, let's have some more.
Yeah, we've got them on top of the Institute of Arts. We've got them on top of the Weizmann Art Museum. We've got them in a lot of sneaky places, and we have them a lot of private homes too around the Twin Cities, which makes it really fun for us to be able to go out and see all these different colonies in different settings. It gives us a lot of information as far as what areas do better than others, what areas we see better honey production in, what areas we see more pollen coming in, and what areas have a higher infestation of varroa mites because there's a bigger density of beekeepers and perhaps beekeepers that aren't managing for those varroa mites and they're spreading from colony to colony. So we do get a lot of information, and it's fun to be able to go and see bees in a lot of different settings around the Twin Cities.
And it's valuable, not just fun.
Right. It's fun. Yeah, I think it's very fun because it is a passion of mine, obviously, but it's really valuable information. And so the work, it's not a scientific experiment. It's not set up that way. So it's not data that is like publishable, but it is useful data. It's useful information for us to have.
Now, your bee lab has a new building, don't you?
Yeah, it's a beautiful building.
And do you give tours?
We do give tours, so
When?
people can go onto our website. We usually give 2 or 3 tours a month. So we just moved in September, so this is all new to us. I think we had 3 tours last month, and usually we give one on a Saturday afternoon, maybe a Friday evening. We try to get it so people can, come after work on the weekend.
So when they sign up saying I want to go on a tour, they may not know what time.
No, it would be there. You would if you go to the Bee Lab website. they'll have tour times listing, and you can sign up for the tour time that works for you.
Good.
Yeah, and we usually tour about 10 people, and it's a beautiful facility. We used to be in several locations on the St. Paul campus. We had lab space in Hodson Hall and office space in Hodson Hall. Our honey house was across from Gibbs Farm, and we had storage over by the.
I saw those.
Yeah, so
House.
we were all spread out everywhere, and
But
now
you're
we're under one roof. We've got
Good.
all of our PhD and grad students. We've got our 2 professors, Dr. Marla Spivak and Dr. Dan Caravo, under one roof, and then we have the bee squad under one roof. So we've got a garage. We've got a nice extracting room, so we can extract our honey there. There's 3 labs. We have a molecular lab, we have a practical lab, and a native pollinator lab. Yeah, the native pollinator lab was done in coordination with the Mdewakanton Sioux community. Looking, encouraging everyone to look at native bees. So that's a fun partnership too.
One of the professors is specialist in
native. Yes, Dr. Dan Carvo, who Marla Spivak was able to hire for the lab, it specializes in native pollinators. So that's been exciting to expand my knowledge about native pollinators and to really ramp up that research.
You also have some part out at the Landscape Arboretum.
That's right, yeah.
The new Pollinator Discovery Center.
Yeah, and that is a beautiful, beautiful building.
Is that a better way to introduce kids to?
It is a better way to introduce kids, yeah. There's some hands-on exhibits that are done really, really well. So the Bee Lab worked in coordination with them to develop that. And so the Bee Lab has always kept bees out at the Arboretum too. In that area, but now with the Discovery Center, the Pollinator Discovery Center, there are actual beehives that you can see through the window, so you can see real bees coming and going, and then they've got wonderful displays, hands-on displays that are so well built and just really well done, and it is a great place to bring kids. You can bring kids to the lab on a tour, but there's not a look and a touch and see kind of thing for them.
I've seen some beekeepers have bees all around their head and on their shoulders.
Yep.
Could I do that?
Sure.
I could.
If you want to. Yeah.
Yeah.
We do it every year for the state fair as kind of a promotional thing to show that honeybees are really gentle, and it is just an eye-catching thing, and it's a great way to get people talking about bees.
Oh, yes.
But it's also for me, I've done it at the fair, I think 4 times now, and for me it's a little bit like, when people bring their goats to the fair or their horses, and they get to show their animals off, and they get to show the relationship they have off with their animals, and for me it's a bit of the same thing. You get to show off my animals and my relationship with their animals. I hope so. Because I have done the bearded bees at the fair 4 times now, I think. I usually, if there's other people that want to do it, I don't want to take the space.
A lot of your team.
But a lot of times there's not a volunteer that wants to do it in public. So I don't have. I think it's fun to do it at the fair because I love the fair and I don't mind crowds and I think that's a good time. So I might be doing it at the fair again.
Oh, good.
I'm always game.
And I've seen a little bit about a movie, More Than Honey.
More Than Honey.
What, can you tell us about that?
Well, I just think there are a lot of movies out there about bees and honey because they're fascinating and beautiful. And if you ever get a good camera and you get out into a bee yard and film the work in the hive or even the bees just coming and going with their pollen loads on their legs, it's beautiful. So there are a lot of movies out there, but there's some that have, better information than others, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I guess More Than Honey is a movie that I would say has got some good information in there, and a good look at the hive. It's funny because I think actually it is a fly that's on the cover of there. There's a lot of flies, and there's a lot of flies that try to pretend they're bees.
Go after the honey.
Yeah.
But I see here a quote from one of your people at the Bee Lab, Elaine Evans. Diverse bee species provide diverse pollination services that support diverse wildlife habitat.
Yep.
Now, that seems to be an important concept.
Yeah, I mean, and it's sort of intuitive, if we make the landscape healthy for our honeybees, it's going to be healthy for us too, and all the animals in there. We've been working with Pheasants Forever. They've got a big campaign to restore native prairie and native pollinator habitat because they're finding, they want to get out and hunt pheasant, and there's just not the habitat for their birds to be in. And what's good for pheasants is good for bees, and good for for all the native wildlife that really needs that
I'm
habitat.
glad they finally realized that.
Right.
so that we continue to eat the food that bees pollinate.
Right. And there are a lot of native pollinators out there, but as far as our industrialized food system and the amount of food that we need to produce, there's just not the native pollinators out there to be able to do all that work. So, just a little, to give you a clue of like about 2.1 million hives are in the U.S. A lot of those beekeepers are migratory beekeepers, so they come from North Dakota, Minnesota, Montana, and then in the winter months
they move
migrate.
around?
Yep, and so they'll go to Louisiana or Texas or California to pollinate oranges and grapefruit and all the other things we eat.
Really?
Yeah, so those beekeeping families, they load up their hives onto semis, and a lot of them have a second home somewhere, and their kids even go to school somewhere else for part of the year. So it's a tough lifestyle for the beekeepers and the bees, but we really need those.
And their families.
And their families. But out of the 2.1 million hives in the U.S., it's estimated that about 1.7 of them go to California for the almond bloom every year.
Almonds.
Yep, because people are loving the almond milk and loving almonds because it's such a good protein source for us to keep trim, right? So,
Wow.
and those almond groves are pretty much a giant monoculture. I've seen pictures, I've never seen it in person, but it's miles and miles and miles of trees, and when they bloom, it's just a field of white, and it's beautiful. And the bees are there, and there's pollen and nectar, but it's a limited diet for them. So it's stressful, and they're also exposed to some things that are sprayed on almonds. There's a fungicide that is sprayed, and they try to spray it at night so the bees aren't on the flowers, but it's a tough life for the bees. They really are working hard. We really depend on them for all we eat.
Well, I'm glad there are people helping bees.
Yeah.
Like you.
Well, I have been keeping bees for about 20 years, and I tell you, when I first started keeping bees, a lot of people thought I was a little nutty. And
Really?
they thought, oh, well, it's another goofy thing you've gotten into or something. But in the last 5 to 10 years, I feel the attitude has changed so much. People really care. People really care about what's happening to our planet, and they care about bees. I think the story has gotten out there, and people want to do their part. I really see the attitude has totally changed. And especially if, like, some of our corporate partners that we have bees on their campuses, as soon as we put hives on the campuses, suddenly every employee in that place wants to know how their bees are. And they ask, how are our bees? Is there food for our bees? And pretty soon that campus is starting to go green, and they're like, well, we don't need all this grass, and we don't need to spray chemicals on our grass
need
anymore. Well, let's
flowers.
plant some flowers.
Yeah.
Let's let this part go native and this part go wild, and leave some habitat and make sure our bees are okay. So it's great.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to know that
Yeah.
the corporations are providing the space, and
Yeah.
the employees are warming up to the importance of protecting those bees,
Yeah, it's exciting.
making sure they have enough food. And
Yeah. And there's a lot of campaigns too about planting seeds for bees and getting habitat back. A lot of people are putting pollinator gardens in their yards, and it really does make a difference.
well, is there a similar problem in other states and other Canada, Mexico,
For sure. It's a worldwide problem with honeybees.
worldwide?
It is, yeah. In fact, a coworker was saying somebody was arguing with her that the problem is GMOs, and that in Europe they've outlawed GMOs. And I was like, well, in Europe they're having problems with their bees too. It's more than that. It's a complicated issue, and the mites play a big part.
And spelling out GMOs, genetically modified
Organisms.
organisms.
Yeah.
So they are, from your perspective, they are not damaging.
They're not the main culprit. No, they're not the main culprit.
Yeah.
It's really, the varroa mite has really decimated our bees. So it's a parasitic mite, and it also carries viruses. It's a vector for other pathogens.
Well, these are usually white boxes
Right.
piled one on top of the other.
Yep. The Langstroth hive.
Each one is a hive.
No, the whole stack is a hive.
Oh.
Yep. So as that colony grew, they added boxes to give it space. It probably started in one deep, and then they put, more boxes on as it grew. So inside those boxes is going to be a cluster of bees that go, in between. There's frames, and there's going to be, in general, a cluster of bees, and that will be one colony. And like I was talking about, the superorganism. So there's many, many bees in there, but only one queen. So even in a box that's got three, a hive stack like that, that's got 3 boxes, there's still just one queen in there.
Wow. That's a lot of work for one.
Right, yeah, in the summertime, a queen can lay up to 2,000 eggs a day.
Wow.
Right, so, and if they get too crowded in those boxes, that's when you get a swarm. So, so half the bees will leave and look for a new home.
Oh.
And half will stay behind. So the term swarm often sounds pretty scary to people, but it's actually one of the most gentle states. And that's when we do a beer to bees, we actually are tricking that group of bees into thinking they've swarmed. So all they really care about doing is staying next to their queen, because she's their link to the future. She's the only one that can lay eggs. So we put the queen in a little cage, and we tie her on our chin, and we shake the bees. Well, we've prepped those bees beforehand. So a couple days beforehand, we took some younger bees. We shook them in a box, so they don't have any comb in there. They don't have any brood to defend. They don't have any honey to defend. And then we put the queen in there in a cage, and then we let them sit. And so after a while, they don't have anything to do, and they end up just needing to stay next to that queen. So they kind of think they've swarmed. At least that's what we think they think. But at least they're in the state of a swarm because they don't have a nest to defend.
But you're teaching the bees to be ready to go.
Kind of. We're taking away every other influence except for the queen. So all they want to do is stay with her, because without her, they don't have a link to the future. They don't have someone they don't have anybody laying eggs that will bring more workers when they die. So in the summertime, worker honeybee will live like 3 to 6 weeks. So that's why queen is laying so many eggs, is to keep that population up.
Only 3?
Yeah, they work themselves to death in the summertime.
Wow.
So when a colony gets too crowded in a box, they will swarm, and what happens is that queen will lay eggs, and the workers will raise new queens, but before those new queens emerge, the old queen leaves with half the bees, and then half the bees stay behind. And out of those queen cells that are left behind, one will remain to be the queen for that group.
Well, that's a neat way to multiply.
Yeah.
So are things looking up now?
It's up and down, but kind of holding steady at a precarious state, I would describe it. We've had winter losses going up and down.
Yeah, I see acceptable winter loss,
Yep.
total winter loss, and
Total annual
annual
loss. Yep. So it hasn't. The last 10 years have been pretty rough, for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, and here's by state.
State by state. Yep.
We lost over half our bees
We did in Minnesota.
in 2014.
The winter of
15.
2014, 2015.
But some of the states had even worse
Yeah.
loss.
Yep. And some states aren't big
60%.
beekeeping states, so. But yeah, a lot of beekeepers in Minnesota are losing around half their hives every year. So if you're a hobbyist, it can be pretty discouraging if you only have 1 or 2 hives and you lose 50%. And it's terrible for a commercial person too. If they go out into a yard with 80 colonies and 40 of them are gone, it's pretty devastating.
And the most bees are in California, Florida, Minnesota, Montana, North Dakota, and South Dakota.
Yep.
So,
Those are the biggest honey producing states.
well,
Who knew, Montana? But if you ever drive through Montana, you see a ton of beehives if you keep your eyes peeled.
really?
Yep.
Now, why do these states stand out? I can see orange growing in Florida and California, but
We have a really nice intense summer month, or summer season month. It is basically a month here. But we have an intense summer season,
Yeah.
and there's better forage. So we've got,
oh,
you know.
better forage.
Yeah.
We are more hospitable
Yep.
to bees.
Yep. There's more
Good.
nectar to be made into honey.
Well, this has been fascinating. I think we could talk quite a while longer.
I think we could.
Well, do you have a favorite story about the bees?
Oh, a favorite story?
What, or maybe an experience? You've had so many.
I have had so many. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I just think of when I get to take an observation hive, which is a small glass-sided hive, into a school is kind of a highlight. And you talk to a group of kids and you show them some pictures and talk about the information. And when you get to pull out that observation hive and the kids can see the live bees, it's always a really special time. And there's just a lot to look at. It's better than TV. They could sit and stare at it
Yes.
for hours.
Yeah. I
So,
bet.
yeah.
My grandkids have been doing that.
Yeah.
And is there any move toward automating that you know of? Automating the care of hives with robots or
Not that
and sensors?
Not that I know of. I know people have tried to automate pollination, and there's some robotic bees, and I know in some
Oh, there
some
are?
greenhouses they have they'll have handheld pollinators where they go around to the in a greenhouse full of tomatoes, say.
Oh,
They might go around with a handheld pollinator, but
That is-
nothing's as good as a real bee. And bumblebees are good, very good pollinators. They're buzz
Oh.
pollinators. So a lot of people that grow tomatoes are dependent on bumblebees.
and
but-
bumblebees don't produce honey.
No, they don't. They actually they collect nectar and they technically make a little bit of honey, but not like a honeybee. A honeybee actually doesn't have any innate knowledge as far as not making honey. So as long as there is nectar to be gathered, they will
They-
produce honey. So they'll produce more than they need in general.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad they are producing.
Yeah.
I grew up on clovercrest honey in Manitoba,
Delicious.
and that big container with it was not liquid, it was sort
Crystallized.
of crystallized,
Yeah.
yes. And that taste really woke me up every morning
Yeah.
to go to school.
Did it? Kept you healthy too.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
thank you again.
All right. Thank you for having me, Bill.
Yeah, well, it's been a really great education for
Great.
our viewers.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in.